Alright guys, so this is where I had all these logs piled up. And I took 2 or 3 gooseneck loads up there on my wood lot, but the rest of it I just kept here so I could scrape the driveway clean and everything, which it still got sawdust, but that is what it is. But anyway, this has ended up what I split and got cut here. It goes on back there, which it ain't a ton of wood. I mean, I think there may be 5 to 7 rick there, I believe. I doubt there's 8. And I've got quite a bit of wood that I'm just getting rid of because, I come across a lot of wood and doing tree work and logging and different things. A little light logging, I like to call it, a little backyard logging. It's hard for me to keep all the wood. So I've got a pile here. Some of this I may dig through and get the pieces out, but I just pushed it up to get it out of there. And, it's a mess and of sorts, but I'm gonna get rid of some of that because some of that stuff, I could split down with a saw and all that kind of thing. And I have done that. Like, I started that piece, you can see it. But the deal is, with as much wood as I got, you got to kind of get time versus money kind of deal. And yeah, I know I'm showing my license plate, but all this stuff's public information. If anybody wanted to, they could go to the courthouse and look me up, And plus, I'm not really hiding nothing from nobody. I don't have any money. So they're not gonna, get anything out of me, you know what I mean? Like, far as if they was to want my identity theft or whatever. Yeah, my hot rod. But they're not gaining much. They might get a lot of debt. But anyhow, so that's what I've been up to. Getting this cleaned up. I did split some on the hill a little bit today, and I've been delivering firewood. I've got my truck set up for firewood now. I've got my fuel tank, my toolbox out of it, and I built me some homemade makeshift racks. It took me, I don't know, it probably took me about 30 minutes to build them. I just grabbed some scrap lumber, ripped it down with my little Milwaukee chainsaw, and then I cut everything with the battery-powered Milwaukee chainsaw. It's not like it's all rough frame. It ain't like I'm doing finished carpentry or anything, so it's all good. But what I'm wanting to mainly make this video about, and I don't know which order I'll do it, but I'm gonna have a sharpening video coming out as far as my round ground. When I cut wood, I'm cutting stuff that's like this, not in the tree. It's been laid on the ground. It's been, moved around on the ground, dragged through the dirt, dust, mud, or whatever, laying on the ground. And so I'm not going to run square ground chain. Excuse me. I'm dying. Got terrible sinus and allergies. But what I'm getting at is I'm not going to run square ground chain due to the fact that it's just, to me, it doesn't get any dull any quicker. You can tell it's so sharp and it cuts so nice. You can tell sooner, I guess, in a sense, when it gets dull. It just is what it is. It cuts so good. If you nick it or, knocks the corner off your cutting edge or whatever, you can really, really tell that it's not cutting right. And also, so what I'm getting at is when I cut firewood, I change back to round ground. And I can hand file fairly decent. I'm not terribly quick at it, but I can get a chain sharp, get it cutting good. But it's so much quicker for me to use my organ grinder. It is, and time's money to me. And I love chainsaws, love the hobby, and I'm an enthusiast or whatever. but rubbing on a chain is not my favorite pastime. So when it comes to sharpening, I try to get on it, you know, get it done or whatever, you know. And typically when I'm cutting, I either bring 4 or 5 saws, or if I only bring a couple saws, I bring a lot of extra chain with me. You know, at least 2 loops per saw, you know, so I can cut. And, you know, if I do all that, then I'm having a pretty bad day and I can hand sharpen it if I've got to. But what I'm getting at is I'm going to have a video coming out of how I grind chain on the Oregon grinder. I keep my head tilt at 52.5. I keep my top plate angle at I think it's about 22.5, which is a little less steep than what round ground is, and a little more steep than what square ground factory comes. I'm talking factory angles. It's a little less steep than the factory angles like on Husqvarna and the Steel RS, and I think even like the Oregon and the EXL and the C83. But it's more steep than the out of the box square ground chain that you buy. And that's how I run my square ground. I run this at about 22.5, and I always haven't done that. I used to run my round ground at 25 to 30, sometimes even 35, and it cuts fairly decent, but I found that it's a whole lot rougher, and it's not quite as durable. And this cuts plenty good enough. And I also run full skip chain when I'm cutting firewood. I done a video on if you're sharpening, if you're not an advanced hand file sharpener, the quickness of sharpening full skip versus full comp chain. You know, you're cutting your time in half. If it took you 30 minutes or a minute a tooth or something on a 28 driver, you know, I had it all broke down or whatever. And anyway, I also got all my exhaust. When I cut the other day with this Aaron A-Lens 500i, I had a factory full skip chain on it with the raker set at about 38 to 40 thou. According to the West Coast raker gauge, I'm gonna say it's more close to 40 thou. And I run my rakers lower on the full skip when I'm cutting firewood, and I run my rakers lower on full skip than I do the full comp, just because there's less teeth. Yeah, I want more of a bite. And you know, I like my chain to self-feed, especially if I'm cutting firewood. Now, if I'm falling, I like my rakers high, just due to the fact you don't get that wonk wonk all the time. So, well, I guess what I'm getting at is I've got everything geared up for firewood, more or less now. And I still got, you know, chain set up for falling or whatever. And, you know, if I had to cut a tree real quick, just one tree, I probably ain't gonna change everything out, just suffer through it. But, you know, if I was going to fall 10 or 15, I'd change it out and get back right. But I had a factory grind Husqvarna chain on there, and I've done tests on it. I think with the C83, the EXL, Archer, there was 4 or 5 chains I done, and I don't know that it was fast. C83 may have been the fastest, but this Husqvarna chain wasn't far behind it. It cut really good. It was right up there with the top brands is what I'm getting at. But when I was cutting on that trailer, cutting that firewood off there, when I had the 2 500s, I made a video of it. I'd already changed the exhaust on the Ripsaw 500 and left the straight shot on there. And when I done my original testing, the saws were set up exactly the same, and they were neck and neck, like, you know, tenths of a second apart. Like one would be 5.5, one would be 5.6 or 5.4. You know, all of them was in between 5 and 6 seconds, and that could be my cutting error and or me gauging the times. You know, I don't know how to side by side it or whatever. I'm not good at editing, and so I just do the best I can to get around about time. So both saws were neck and neck, what I was saying. But when I cut on that trailer, either the chain on this or that Indian straight shot was holding it way back, because the Ripsaw was cutting better that day than this one was, and that wasn't the case the other day. And so we got Nashville Motor Speedway here. But anyway, it just wasn't cutting as good. But now that I've changed the exhaust over and got this dual outlet that like I made like the D&O copy or whatever, and there is a difference. I use 1-inch pipe, 1-inch OD pipe for this one, so it's got like a 2-inch outlet. Whereas the Ripsaw, I use like a 7/8 OD or whatever, so it's got like a 1 3/4. So there's a little bit of a difference there. Not a ton, but there is, and that's just the pipe I ordered. I didn't see any that was the size of what I put in the Ripsaw 500, so it just is what it is. But what I'm getting at is when I change this saw once again, each muffler mod I've done to it, the bark box, the straight shot, each step I've took has made this saw better, and now it's got way more throttle response, and it just feels a whole lot stouter than what it did. So I'm gonna rerun that test again and see which one was what. I've dulled that chain. I run it a little bit today to see the difference. So it's somewhat dull, but anyhow, I'm gonna put a factory chain back on it and set the rakers like it was, see how it cuts against that Ripsaw, like what I grind, and see if it was the chain or the exhaust making a difference, or it could have been a little bit of both. And then I'm gonna put the same bar and chain on it and see how it cuts. So I'm gonna do some testing on that. But right now, I just want to show you how this chain cuts, as far as the way it self-feeds and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's just and this is really hard red oak. It's dry. Of course, this is a crotch piece or whatever, and I may do a little cut on a little piece. I'm not going to cut a lot out here because I don't want to make a mess again, but we'll look at the chips and everything, which you're not going to get a big fluffy chip all this like you do you know, softwood or even fresh red oak or white oak or whatever, because this has been cut probably a month and a half, and it was on its way out dying when I cut it. So and the sap was coming down, so it's not dry, but it ain't the softest. But this ain't a speed test. This is just a chain demonstration. So that's a brand new chain off the grinder with the raker set at 40 thou. Is it, you know, is 40 thou the best? You know, it may be a little aggressive, but raker's not terrible. He likes Zach Brown band, I think. He wants everybody to hear it. But anyway, you know, it's not the best. It's not terrible. You can see the chips right there somewhat. You know, that is red oak, and when I got into the white oak, it got a little better. You know, it's pulling fairly decent chips for what the wood I'm cutting. And then this red oak, it's not the best, it's not the worst. But like I say, again, you're not going to get big chips on dry red oak or hard red oak, whatever, you know. But this is kind of the way. You can't see it. You'll see it in my video. But anyway, you know, he really wants me to hear it. He's coming back around. He may be a subscriber wanting to meet me. Shoot. But anyway, it just is what it is, you know. People go back and forth. And I understand if you're racing or whatever, racing saws, and you're needing the best time, you want the fastest chain. I myself, for one, if I'm just cutting firewood about this size, which, you know, most of the time that's what you're cutting, you know, every once in a while you get into big stuff, but I'm gonna get a bigger saw. I like to keep my saw loaded up just a little bit. I don't want it screaming at the highest RPMs that there is for long periods of time, just because it's building heat, I feel like. I want it working a little bit, but I don't want it working as in a dull chain. And the 48 or the 40 thou on this, with the way I got my top plate angle and whatnot, is not really that bad aggressive. I probably could fall with it all right, you know, as long as I wasn't wanting to bore cut with it. You know, bore cutting or whatever with a full skip, with the rakers like that, not going to happen. It'll buck and jump and beat you to death. But for the most part, you know, it would be okay. You might get a little gravy on your angle cut, but that's why I don't run my top plate as steep. And plus, I feel like it gives you more, with running it less steep, I feel like it takes more pressure off that working corner, so to speak. It evens the load in a sense. And it's just smoother. It is in hardwood. And I probably would run that same angle in softwood too. But I also run a steeper head tilt than a lot of people. A lot of people keep it at 55, 60. I'm running at about 52.5. I have tried 50. That's a little much. But what I'm trying to mimic and copy is hand file. You know, the hand file, what the chain looks like after it's hand filed, and I'm trying to mimic the top plate angle of a factory chain, because they cut fairly good, you know, like the C83 and the XL and all that. So that's why I run it like that. And I'm not saying that I'm perfectly close, but I'm pretty close. I just feel like you know, you don't necessarily have to go by them marks on that grinder. But that's kind of what I've been up to, cleaning this up. I haven't videoed a ton of that just due to the fact that we've been trying to hurry up and get it done, because we have a lot of trick-or-treaters up here. Typically we have about 1,000 kids come through, And my wife's on my butt pretty hard about getting this mess cleaned up. And I want it cleaned up too. I was going to leave it a while because it bothers some people and it don't bother me. But, you know, the boss, you got to do what the boss says. And so, you know, that just is what it is. Sometimes I video and sometimes I don't. But I did, you know, make the grinding video, and maybe it helped some people out. That's not a bad cutting chain. You know, would it outcut a full skip C83 or whatever? I don't know what the number of that is. I don't know. I'd like to do a test and see. I know I can get it fairly close hand filing and with the sharpener. I can get them cutting pretty even. I don't know that I can get it to beat it. But if I can get it to cut even, then I'm pretty happy. And some people, you know, cut and beat it or whatever. I think it depends on the type of wood you're in. If you're in a softer wood, you may be able to knock those breakers down just a little bit more, or leave them higher. And you know, anytime you keep the saw higher up in the RPM band, and it's cutting, and you can apply pressure and get it, you know, it's gonna cut faster in a sense, is what I'm saying. You know, a saw turning 12,000 in the cut is gonna cut faster than a saw turning, you know, 9,500 in the cut. And some of that depends on the chain. You know, like I got that thing loaded up pretty good, and I was pushing on it too. Not the first cuts, but you know, it tried to pull me in. You know, it about yanked the saw out of my hands, one-handing it, but you shouldn't do that probably, unless you want to. You know, there's time and place that you can do that, and cutting blocks like that, as long as you're not going towards the ground, ain't terrible. You know, you've seen it jump back a little bit when I was just playing around there, and that's because I got my tip down in there too far. You gotta kind of know your saw. Now, would I do that if I was working in a big pile like that? No, you know, not working, but out here where I'm kind of in a controlled environment, it's not the end of the world. And I know I don't have chaps on, but you know, if you're watching this and you're worried about my legs or me wearing chaps, buy me a pair, send them to me, and I might wear them. Anyway, I'm going in. It's getting dark, and this video is getting long enough, and you know, it just is what it is. So we'll catch y'all later. Y'all have a good one, and you know, like I say, I don't care to tell people where I'm at, living, or showing whatever, because all this stuff's public information. All anyone's got to do is go to a courthouse, or even look up online the property, and it tells everything about you pretty much. You know, it is what it is. I don't think I'm gonna have. Well, I have had a couple of people that watch stop by and talk before. It ain't no big deal if I'm out doing something, whatever, you know. Probably not gonna be able to go to dinner with you unless we make arrangements, but you know, I'm pretty sociable. So anyhow, we'll catch y'all later, and don't overcomplicate grinding. It just is what it is. If you can get a chain to cut and it's self-feeding like that and you're happy with it, run it, you know, on my grinder, so you can see that I'm not joshing you. But see, this is the line for that, and there's the line for that. Of course, the angle you're sitting at. But I'm about right in the middle of it, right there. And then here, I've got my own little marks made because, you know, and on softer stuff, I go at that other dot. But I played around with this one a little more than I have my square grinder. My one grinder. Taking a little too much off. And I still don't like a steep hook, even with this. And I dress my stone quite often. Because I don't like I don't like a steep hook. Pull that back a little more. I don't know what y'all can see of that. You can see shit, can you? Oh man, you see it right there pretty good. I just bumped that dude. Of course, I'm looking at the camera, so. Get the hook right here. Yeah. I don't like that hook. That's terrible. That is way steeper than I like. Which it ain't really picking up on the camera. There it is. Okay. So how I do that, get that not so terrible. Let's see, it's got a little bit of a flake hanging on there. That's why it looks so shoddy. Like a burr. And if you come back over here and look, then that's not much different than a file, other than the burr there. But this chain's horrible about it. Steel chain don't do it because it's really hard. This chain ain't as hard as steel chain. It's pretty dang close to the. It's a little deeper right there. That's just got to do with my grinder there. They have the wheel. They have that just a little sharp in the middle. I'll just take it and flatten it out just a little. And that might have made it worse, but you just gotta get. And I do my rakers by my hand. By hand, I don't use this machine just due to the fact that I'm barely taking any. Trying to clean it up. File now. So I don't advise you to do it while the machine's running, but it's not terrible. See what I mean? That's pretty close to what a file does. And is it faster than C83? I have no idea. But that's what you get. I mean, See, what I could stop right there and be sharp, because once this flat right here covers to the bottom of that tooth right here, like so, like there, I'm sharp. You know what I'm saying? Because it's putting my 52-degree angle on there. That's why I've ground them every which way and they've cut, like that, and they've cut, because I'm just getting that top plate right there. Let's look at the other one. See, once you get that angle and that corner sharp, you're sharp. This is just what it is, you know. And don't get me wrong, the side plates have a little bit to do with it. That may be where the 10 degree comes in effect to make this sharper, you know. But this chain cut's good, you know. And some chains call for the 10 degree and some chains don't. So, you know, and I'm not 100% sure that I'm accurate on all this, but it just is what it is. But anyway, that's the chain done. And I'll set the rakers at about 38 to 40 thou, and we'll be cutting hickory tomorrow. 1850 on the Janka scale for all you Janka warriors out there that like to claim how hard your wood is, you know what I'm saying?